Hi everyone, my name is Lena Hart and my father's funeral wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of his revenge. It happened at the will reading. A mahogany table. 6 chairs. And tension so thick you could almost hear it breathing. My stepmother, Veronica, sat across from me, pearls glinting under the chandelier, face painted in practiced grief. Beside her sat her son Kyle, the boy she called family, while treating me like a tenant. Dad's lawyer, Mr. Whitmore, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. Before we begin, I must ask that we all remain civil. Veronica scoffed. Oh please. Let's just get this over with. We all know what he wanted. I folded my hands in my lap. Do we? She turned, lips curling into a smirk. Your father wanted someone capable to handle the company, not a sentimental artist who barely visits. I felt my jaw tighten. I was with him every weekend. Her voice cut sharp as glass. Yes, until it stopped being convenient for you. Mr. Whitmore's expression didn't flicker. He simply reached for a folder on his desk, one marked in bold letters, "If Veronica Speaks First." The room fell silent. He clicked open a video file. Dad's face filled the screen, alive, clear-eyed, sitting in his study with that familiar half-smile. If you're watching this, he began, then my wife couldn't resist making this about herself. Hi, Veronica. Her smile froze. Dad leaned forward, voice steady. For 3 years I recorded every meeting, every transaction, every manipulation you tried to bury. You thought you'd erased me. You didn't. My stomach turned cold. Mr. Whitmore pressed play again, revealing folders, labeled, diverted funds, property fraud, asset transfers. My father's voice continued. Lena, if she spoke first, she forfeits everything. The company, the estate, the assets, all of it reverts to you. Veronica's pearl necklace trembled as she gripped the table. This is insane. But I just sat there, frozen, because beneath the shock there was something else in my father's voice. A plan. A message meant for me. And it had only just begun. Mr. Whitmore didn't pause. He clicked the next file and Dad's voice filled the room again, steady, calm, deliberate. If Veronica tries to dispute this, play recording A. He looked straight into the camera like he already knew she would. Veronica lunged forward, slamming her palm on the table. This is manipulation. You can't. Whitmore pressed play. The speakers crackled and suddenly her voice echoed through the room. Unmistakable, vicious, alive. Veronica, once he's gone I'll move the shares before anyone notices. Lena's too soft to fight me. Kyle, what if the lawyer asks questions? Veronica, then I'll cry. People always forgive tears. Every word dripped with arrogance. Her face drained of color. Where did you get that? She hissed. Whitmore adjusted his glasses. Your husband had a knack for security. He stored voice-activated devices in your office, the lake house, even your car. All legally documented. I sat frozen. I could barely breathe. Dad had known. He'd seen everything. And instead of warning me, he'd built a quiet revenge, one that waited until now to bloom. Veronica's composure cracked. You can't just take my house. Whitmore opened another file, a signed agreement with her forged signature exposed in bright red annotation. Document authenticity, falsified. Witness, none. Timestamp 3:47 p.m. verified. My heart pounded. The truth wasn't just spoken. It was archived, time-stamped, bulletproof. Dad's voice returned, softer this time. Lena, if you're listening, you think I didn't see you giving up on fighting back. You learned to survive quietly. That's not weakness, that's restraint. But this time I fought for you. Veronica pushed back her chair violently, eyes wild. You don't deserve any of this. You abandoned him when he needed you most. I stood slowly, hands steady. You mean when you convinced him to cut me out? When you told him I was a liability? Her silence answered for her. For years she'd been the loudest voice in the room. Now all she could hear was my father's. And for the first time, I didn't feel small anymore. Veronica sat frozen, her manicured fingers trembling on the polished oak table. Mr. Whitmore closed the last video file and turned to me with measured calm. There's one more folder, he said quietly, sliding a sealed brown envelope across the table. The label read in my father's familiar handwriting, "For my daughter's eyes only." My stomach twisted. What is it? His final instructions, Whitmore replied. He wanted you to open it alone. Veronica lunged for it, but I was faster. My hand closed around the envelope as Whitmore's voice cut like steel. Touch that again and I'll have security remove you. The fury in her eyes was volcanic. You think you've won, she spat. You have no idea what you're getting into. But she was wrong. For the first time in my life, I did. I stood, clutching the envelope to my chest, and walked out of the room without another word. The hallway outside was quiet, the air heavy with dust and memory. I sat on the bench beneath Dad's old portrait, fingers trembling as I tore it open. Inside was a flash drive and a letter. The handwriting, strong, deliberate, familiar, felt like a voice reaching out from the grave. Lena, if you're reading this, you've already seen what she did. I let her think she was winning because people like Veronica always dig their own graves when no one stops them. I needed proof, and I needed you to believe in yourself again. I blinked hard, tears blurring the ink. This drive contains every transaction and transfer tied to her. But it also contains something else. The reason I built this company in the first place. It was never for the money. It was for you. Take it. Finish it. Make it yours. At the bottom, a single line. You don't fight back by screaming, Lena. You fight back by surviving beautifully. I closed my eyes and breathed, slow, deep, certain. The years I spent silenced, ignored, invisible, were over. And somewhere down that hallway, Veronica's voice rose, shrill, desperate. He knew. Her kingdom had just begun to crumble. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove straight to Dad's office, the one Veronica had claimed as hers weeks after his funeral. The place still smelled faintly of cedar and old ink, the same scent that used to cling to his jacket when he hugged me goodbye. I sat at his desk, plugged in the flash drive, and waited. A single folder appeared on the screen, titled Legacy. My heart thudded. I clicked it open. Inside were subfolders labeled by year, 3 years. Each one filled with audio files, spreadsheets, and videos, each time-stamped, each documenting every theft, every lie, every falsified contract Veronica and Kyle had forged. Dad had been dying slowly, and yet he'd spent his final years building a digital time bomb. I pressed play on one of the videos. Dad sat at the same desk, his face thinner but his eyes still sharp. If you're watching this, Lena, then I was right to trust you. I know what they've been doing. The company you think you lost, it's already yours. I transferred the patents and core assets to a separate entity under your name. My breath caught. I scrolled through the files again, and there it was. A notarized document dated 6 months before his death. Hart Innovations LC, owner, Lena M. Hart. My eyes stung. He hadn't just protected me, he'd rebuilt the business around me. Another file played automatically. Veronica's voice again, this time in a meeting. Once he's gone, I'll rename everything. No one will know the difference. Dad's voice overlapped softly like an echo. I knew, Veronica. I always knew. I covered my mouth, shaking with a mix of grief and awe. This wasn't just revenge, it was redemption. I backed up every file onto my own drive, then emailed a copy to Whitmore. Tomorrow these would become public record. And when they did, everything she'd stolen, every ounce of her arrogance, would come crashing down. Dad didn't leave me with anger. He left me with evidence. And a legacy worth protecting. The next morning I woke before sunrise. The world outside was silent, a calm before the storm my father had been planning for years. I forwarded every folder to Mr. Whitmore and my father's board of directors. Then with one deep breath I hit send on the final email, the one titled, To Whom It May Concern, The Real Story of Hart Industries. Within an hour my phone began to buzz like a trapped hornet. First a call from Whitmore. Lena, the files are verified. Every last one. The board's in an emergency meeting as we speak. Then a message from an unknown number. Veronica. What did you do? I didn't answer. Instead I opened my laptop and watched it unfold in real time. Business news alerts lighting up my screen. CEO widow under investigation for corporate fraud. Hart Industries files emergency injunction against former co-owner. Veronica's carefully curated image was collapsing. The charity galas, the staged photos, the interviews about resilience after loss. Now those same reporters were asking where the missing $2.4 million in consulting fees had gone. Every stolen dollar, Every fake contract, every false signature. Exposed. The board voted within 3 hours. Veronica and Kyle. Permanently removed. All rights and shares reverted to the rightful owner. Me. I just sat there staring at the email confirmation, unable to move. This was supposed to feel triumphant. It didn't. It felt quiet, like justice finally catching its breath. Ben called me from downstairs. It's everywhere, Lena. You did it. No, I said softly, closing the laptop. Dad did. I just pressed play. Outside, the winter sun was breaking through the clouds, gold spilling across the city skyline. I could almost hear his voice in it, low, amused, steady. You don't win by shouting, Lena. You win by outlasting. Veronica would spend months fighting headlines. I'd spend years building something better. His revenge was complete. But my story, my piece, was just beginning. By evening, my office was quiet again, except for the hum of the city beyond the window and the faint buzz of incoming notifications that I didn't bother to open. Hart Industries was officially mine. Veronica's accounts were frozen, Kyle's credentials revoked, and the world finally knew who the real thief had been. But I wasn't celebrating. I was sitting in Dad's chair, holding a yellowed envelope Whitmore had delivered after the board's decision. On the front, written in the same slanted handwriting I'd seen my whole life. Read only when the noise stops. I broke the seal. Inside, a short letter and an old photograph. Me at 8 years old, covered in paint, standing beside the first prototype of the company's logo. Dad's arm wrapped proudly around me. Lena, you always thought I chose the company over you. You were wrong. I built the company because of you. My chest tightened. When your mother died, I didn't know how to be a parent. I hid behind ledgers and meetings because business made sense. People didn't. Veronica knew how to fill silence, but not how to love inside it. I should have protected you from her sooner. Tears blurred the words, but I kept reading. If I taught you anything, I hope it wasn't how to fight but how to build. Don't let this legacy end as revenge. Let it start as renewal. Take what's yours and turn it into something kind. I folded the letter slowly, pressing it to my chest. Outside, the first snow of the season had begun to fall. The same kind Dad and I used to watch from his office window. Veronica would drown in headlines, excuses, and legal letters. I would rise quietly, not to destroy her, but to outlive her. Because he hadn't just left me evidence. He'd left me clarity. Dad didn't want her ruined. He wanted me restored. And that, I finally understood, was his truest revenge. The following weeks moved like quiet thunder, steady, inevitable. The story of Veronica's downfall was everywhere. Magazines called it The Widow's Undoing. Business networks dissected every detail of the recordings. And for the first time, the Hart name wasn't attached to scandal, but to survival. Yet in the middle of all that noise, I stayed still. I didn't go on camera. I didn't issue statements. I built. Dad's old office became my workspace again. Cleaned, refurnished, simplified. No marble, no grandeur, just light, air, and purpose. I renamed the company's foundation, the Hart Initiative, focused on mentorship programs for women in innovation. The day I announced it, my inbox flooded with messages. Not journalists, not shareholders, but young women, engineers, designers, dreamers, who'd been told they were too soft, too emotional, too much. One message stood out. Your story gave me courage to stay in school. Thank you for showing that strength doesn't need to shout. I stared at that line for a long time. Dad's letter echoed in my head. Turn revenge into renewal. I smiled. I think I'm doing it, Dad. Whitmore called that afternoon. The board wants you to take full control as CEO. Officially. I hesitated, looking around the office. The same walls that once held his voice now carried mine. Yes, I said finally. But under one condition. Every executive must mentor someone who reminds them of who they used to be. He paused, then chuckled. Your father would have liked that. Maybe. But I wasn't doing this for him anymore. I was doing it for the girl who once sat outside this office door waiting to be seen. And she finally was. As some inherit wealth. Others inherit war. But the lucky ones, they inherit clarity. And I knew exactly what to do with mine. A month later, I drove back to the old family estate. The place that once felt like exile and now felt like distance measured in healing. The snow had melted, leaving the gravel road damp under the tires. I parked by the garden my father planted himself, the one Veronica always called a waste of space. It was still blooming. I walked quietly to the headstone, my hands deep in my coat pockets. The world had already moved on from our story. Headlines fade faster than grief ever does. But this moment wasn't for the world. It was for us. I knelt, brushing the leaves from his name. "Hi, Dad," I whispered. My voice didn't shake. "I got it back. Everything you built, and everything you meant for it to stand for. But I changed it. It's not just Heart Industries anymore. It's Heart Initiative. It builds people, not empires." The wind moved softly through the trees as if listening. "You were right," I said. "I did stop believing in myself. But you believed enough for both of us. And even when I didn't understand your silence, you were fighting for me in ways I couldn't see." I pulled a folded paper from my coat, a copy of his letter. I read the final line again, the one I'd memorized. "You don't fight back by screaming. You fight back by surviving beautifully." "I think I finally understand that now," I whispered. Behind me I heard footsteps, Ben always letting me have my silence first. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You ready to go?" I nodded, standing slowly. "Yeah. I've said everything I needed to." We walked back toward the car, the house shrinking behind us. For the first time I didn't feel haunted. I felt guided. Because Dad's revenge wasn't to destroy her. It was to rebuild me. And this time I was ready to live the rest of the story.